Shabbat Shalom. So hopefully you have in front of you a source sheet that I prepared on the it's from the Parsha, although not from a section that we read this morning, the mitzvah of the Egla Arufa. The Egla Arufa is the beheaded calf, or the calf whose neck was broken, as kind of a puzzling mitzvah. But I'm not going to read the whole source word for word, but it says that if a body is found in the open and they don't know who killed this person, then they measure the distance to the nearby cities or the nearby towns, and they figure out which is the town that is closest to where that body was found. And then the elders of the city that's closest, they take a calf, a heifer, which means a young female calf, Egla, a heifer which has never been worked, never pulled an oak. They bring the heifer to a wadi, to a brook, and they strangle it. And then they wash their hands over this heifer, and then they make this declaration: our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it done. Absolve Hashem, your people Israel, whom you redeemed. Do not let guilt for the blood of the innocent remain among your people Israel, and they will be absolved of blood guilt, and thus you will remove from your midst guilt for the blood of the innocent, for you will be doing what is right in the sight of Adonai. Okay, and before looking at the rest of the sources, which you probably cheated already, but what do you make of this mitzvah?
I think it's very contradictory, and it's very non-logically. They kill an innocent baby calf, so they can purify themselves. I don't know.
Okay, and then you have a problem with the whole sacrificial system and Yom Kippur and okay, fair enough. I think many of us would share that, okay? But here's other, I mean, what did the Catholic do, right? But yeah, any other thoughts on this mitzvah?
Seems like a long, drawn-out process.
It's a long, drawn-out process, okay?
I mean, you have to get it and take it all the way to a wadi and then all the way back and while you're doing this, which seems like the normal way of doing the sacrifices. You take it to the temple.
Right.
The Baba is like the kingdom of Israel, and then you just slaughter it there and you're done.
Right.
Here it's a long.
Right. It is a long, drawn-out process, and let's see if there's any. Or what is the reasoning? Okay, so from the Mishnah, it repeats these verses. The elders of the city would then wash their hands in water in the place of the breaking of the neck of the heifer, and they would recite, our hands did not spill this blood, nor did our eyes see. And then the Mishnah asks a question. Well, who said you did? Right? Who said you did? Who thinks that the elders of the city spilled this blood? Who thinks that the elders of the city killed this poor person whose corpse was found in the open nearest to their city? Nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks that. So what is the reason behind that declaration? And here's what it means. They mean to declare the victim did not come to us, and we let him take his leave without food. We did not see him and leave him alone to depart without accompaniment. Right? So nobody's thinking that they actually killed him. like literally killed him, but they're saying we also didn't indirectly kill him. He didn't come to us for food and be turned away. He didn't show up in our city and then leave without accompaniment, right? Because in the ancient world, accompaniment is important. I mean, travel, it's not like you get in your car and you set the destination on the GPS and there you are, right? I mean, they're bandits. It's dangerous, right? So they're saying we're not responsible even indirectly, and then therefore they recite that formula: forgive the Lord your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and the blood shall be forgiven of them. And the late Professor Jacob Milgram, who is the world's greatest expert on the book of Leviticus, who I had the honor of meeting in his home in Jerusalem a number of times because his son Jeremy is a good friend of mine. And Professor Milgram says that this was a way, right, originally, like, blood spilled meant guilt, right? That the land could not tolerate innocent blood and it had to be cleansed. And this was a ritual, but by the time of the Mishnah, they have given the ritual an ethical meaning as well, right? It's not merely that blood has been spilled, so it's got to be cleansed, but there's an ethical meaning behind the ritual to remind us of our responsibility as a society. And then Rashi, and I find this Rashi pretty amazing, says, our hands did not shed, right? Looking again, he said, who thinks they did? Who thinks they killed him, right? Nobody thinks that the elders of the town literally killed this guy, but he was not killed on account of our malfeasance. It was not the case that we sent him off without food, such that he had to become a highwayman in order to eat, and thus he was killed, right? In other words, Rashi understands the connection between poverty and crime, right? Rashi understands, like, when people are impoverished, they sometimes turn to crime to survive. So Rashi is saying, not only did we not turn him away and leave him unprotected, we didn't fail to provide for his material needs, and as a result, he became a criminal, right? Not because he's a bad person, but because he felt that that's what he had to do to survive, right? I mean, like one of the greatest TV shows of all time, Breaking Bad, right? I mean, why did Walter White, I mean, I don't endorse what he did, right? But he felt that he was desperate enough that he had to do that, right? He had to do that. So Rashi believes that there's a connection between poverty and crime, and Rashi says we didn't impoverish this guy with the result that he became a criminal, and then through his life as a criminal became, his life was endangered. Okay, and then from the Talmud, and again, I'm going to summarize this. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul says, all right, well, what's the meaning? Why this young calf, right? And why the wadi? Okay, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul says, well, this calf never produced fruit, right? It had a baby, and in a wadi you can't grow anything, right? In the water, so the wadi is also, so the calf, which has never produced fruit, is brought and killed in the wadi, which is a place where also fruit cannot be grown. To atone for this person who was killed, and because they were killed, they can't bear fruit, right? And as an aside, right, presumably familiar with the statement in the Talmud, right, that whoever kills another person kills an entire world or an entire universe. And if you look further than that, it says because you've killed not only that person, but you've killed all their potential progeny, right? You killed all their potential progeny. And so then the Gemara says, well, wait a second. What if this person was old, right? What if this person was a eunuch, right? So you say you killed this person and you killed not only them, but all of their fruits that cannot come to the world. So is that saying, like, if you kill an old person or a eunuch or whatever, somebody who's infertile, that's okay, right? We don't have to go through this ritual. And the Gemara says no, because a person's fruit are the mitzvot that they perform, right? And so if you kill this person, you have prevented them from performing mitzvot in the future, and these mitzvot, which are their fruit, are bereaved, right? And so this ritual has to happen. It's not only a matter of like offspring, it's also a matter of mitzvot that are killed off because this person has been killed. Okay, now commentary on this parsha from Nechama Leibovich. Nechama Leibovich was a much beloved Torah commentator in Israel. She put out like weekly parsha sheets where, she had a lot of commentaries on this parsha. She wasn't so much that she was original, but she knew the whole corpus and she would digest it and put them out. And you can get her books in English as well as Hebrew. Eventually she was on the radio in Israel, and she was very, very, very much beloved. I had the fortunate opportunity to study with her once in her apartment in Jerusalem, and she was like, everybody's grandmother. If your bubby was a great Torah scholar, that's Nechama Leibovich, okay? And this is what she says about the meaning of this ritual. And I have to say that this, for me, this hits me really, really strongly. Okay. We see then that responsibility for an evil act does not fall only on the perpetrator and not just on the abettor, right? If bad things are happening in your society, I didn't do it, not my fault. I didn't help them, not my fault. No. The crime does not only involve cooperation, but also negligence, omission, and inattention. One who sits in his quiet corner and ignores the rest of society and its corrupt ways and guards his soul with every safeguard and sees oppression and theft and robbery, but does not arise and does not move and does not struggle and does not protest, he also cannot say, "Our hands have not spilled this blood." If bad things are being done in your society and you are a very righteous person, I'm not political. I'm not political. Right? Well, you have the luxury of being not political, right? If you were Latino, you maybe don't have the luxury of not being political. If you're a West Bank Arab and your town is being besieged by settlers and the government is looking the other way, you don't have the luxury of being, I'm not political. right? And I read an article by an Israeli Orthodox Rabbi Zach Truah, about, and I presume at this point, because it's in the news enough, right? I mean, if Mike Huckabee is criticizing something that Israel is doing or not doing, it's kind of pretty extreme, right? But there are places in the West Bank where settlers are just going nuts and committing incredible violence against random civilians, besieging their houses. I mean, Huckabee assumes that many of these people are Christian Palestinians, which may be not a great idea considering the support that Israel gets from evangelicals in this society, right? But, so, and it's bad enough that a number of Israeli officials, the ambassador in New York and even Netanyahu said, this does not represent our society. This is not who we are. We condemn this. Right? They wash their hands, right? But that's all they do, right? If you say, I condemn it, then send the army to stop it. Right? Send the army to stop it. Don't send the army to help the people who are doing it. Send the army to stop it. Arrest the people who are doing it, right? The statement, we don't support this, this doesn't represent our beliefs, is all very well and good. And it's important, but it's not enough, right? And that's what Rashi and the Hama and all these people are saying. If you wash your hands and you say, we didn't create the conditions that led to this death, so forgive us for the death of this innocent person, that's not magic, right? If you say, right, we didn't create the conditions that caused this, but you did, or you're not doing anything to stop it, then that ritual doesn't work, right? It's not just a matter of a magic ritual. The magic ritual is supposed to guide your behavior. And if it doesn't guide your behavior, it's not effective. And I would go beyond that and say not only is it not effective, it's a Chilul Hashem, it's a desecration of God's name, right? So, in the two societies that we're all connected to, right? Israel and the United States, right? When bad things are happening, you have to protest. You have to stand up. You have to protest. You have to do something to stop it. Like Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, it's not enough to bandage the people who have been crushed by the wheels of injustice. You have to stick a spoke in the wheel. You have to stick a spoke in the wheel to the extent that you can. All right? And so finally, I want to bring up the Kahn Commission. Okay, the Kahn Commission, Sovereign Shatila 1982. Right? Some of us remember it. Some of us remember that really well. And a bunch of Christian Lebanese militia, right? The Phalange went into a Palestinian refugee camp and slaughtered hundreds of Palestinian refugees, right? And there was a huge outcry, and Begin's first response was, Goyim kill Goyim, and they blame the Jews, right? Which was not 100% wrong, right? Because Israel didn't commit those murders, right? But Israel was in control of that territory, and Israel let the Phalange into the refugee camps And so finally there was a commission of inquiry. There was to demonstrate 400,000 people in Tel Aviv when Israel was smaller than it is now, but 400,000 people in Tel Aviv, including Begin's own spokesperson, who then the next day was no longer his spokesperson, right? But eventually they set up a commission of inquiry on like October 7th, right? And that was called the Kahan Commission. And the Kahan Commission ruled that Arik Sharon, who at that time was the defense minister, that Israel bore indirect responsibility. Israel bore indirect responsibility. Israel did not commit those murders, but Israel should have foreseen that they would be committed. Right? And what is the basis of that? The mitzvah of the Egla Arufa. Right? And they said that specifically. A basis for such responsibility may be found in the outlook of our ancestors, which was expressed in things that were said about the moral significance of the biblical portion concerning the beheaded heifer, the Egla Arufa. Right? So Jewish ethics clearly says, right, as Rabbi Abraham Heschel said in the 60s, in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. Right? Some are guilty, but all are responsible. And we have, I believe, and it's not just me, I mean, I try, when I talk about stuff like this, I try really to ground what I say in text that clearly and without any doubt represent the main thrust of our tradition, which says that it's not enough not to actively do evil. It's not enough not to actively do evil. When you see evil being done, well, I'm a righteous person. I go to shul every Shabbos. I keep kosher. I'm not political. I'm not political. No. The Torah is political. The Torah is political. The Mishnah is political. The Talmud is political. And we have an obligation to speak up against evil and to do what we can to stop evil when it's being done in our society, in our name, with our tax dollars. And I think that is, clearly, that may not be, I don't claim that it was the original intent of that. The original intent of that, it may have been very mechanistic, right? But as Professor Milton said, by the time of the Mishnah, the rabbis gave it a moral significance about societal responsibility as well. Shabbat Shalom.